All right. The way I see it, as long as we get one of the two, we should be good. So today we're going to be talking all about interviewing. Okay. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. Just a brief agenda. These times are wrong, but the general idea is we're going to spend about 10 minutes on welcome and introduction, some programmatic reminders, things of that nature. Then we're going to spend about 50 minutes talking about interview best practices, talking about what works best. And then we're going to have 2 video clips that are example interviews. They're relatively entertaining, actually, which is nice. And then for the last 10 minutes, is always going to walk us through how to schedule your mock interview. Okay, so can you move us forward one? And I'm just going to kind of open the floor for reminders. So members of staff, are there any like program updates or reminders that we need to bring up at this time? I would say the biggest thing is read the follow-up email that I believe Lexi's going to be sending. And please make sure that you'll be signing up for your mock interview on Google Classroom. You're signing up for your mock interview on Google Calendar. The information on how to do that will be posted to Google Classroom at 3 p.m. I already got the post scheduled. It's perfect. All right, can you move forward a slide, please? Wonderful. So our learning outcomes that we're looking for today, first, that you can prepare for a virtual and for an in-person interview, that you feel equally prepared for both of those. Just as like a quick check-in, can you put a thumb up or use one of the reactions if you have done an interview before? Okay, seeing a pretty decent number of thumbs. If I were to guess, probably a little bit more than half, which is great. A lot of folks, even if you've done one in person, you might not have done one in like in a virtual platform before. And so that's something that we're going to try to bolster skills on. And also, even if you've been interviewing for a while, I know there's things that I learned as part of developing these slides. So there's always more to learn. That you can utilize strategies for answering interview questions. So there are great ways to keep your thoughts organized when you're answering questions. And we're going to talk a bit about that. And then also how to just overall conduct a successful interview. Okay, so Lexi, if you could move our slide forwards again, please. Thank you. So you got an interview, which is great news, right? It's super exciting. Like, you applied for the job. You had to do all the steps that were associated with that. You got a call or an email back, and you've got the interview, right? And now you've got this finite amount of time to prepare to get ready for that interview, so that when it finally comes, you can do and look and, you know, deliver your best. I was going to say smell your best, but for virtual interviews, that's not as important. Lexi, can you move us forward a slide, please? So different things to consider when planning for an interview. You want to know yourself. You want to know the company. You want to prepare what you're going to wear, prepare your clothing. Talk about grooming a little bit, how to practice, what to practice, when to practice, with whom to practice. A few questions for the employers. We're going to talk about what good questions are, and then we're going to talk about resume and references. So if I was taking notes, these are the things that I would probably write down if I were you. But as you know, you will be getting a copy of the slides probably later today, early tomorrow. But these are really important things to consider as you prepare for your interview. Okay, can you move us forward one? So this first one is knowing yourself, right? So knowing your education, knowing your work experience, skills, strengths, weaknesses, goals, and then how to actually prepare for this. So know your education. Now, a lot of people, when they think about this, they might think solely degree, but you've probably taken classes. In fact, I'm fairly sure all of you have taken classes that can relate to any given job description, right? So if they're saying that they want computer skills and you took a class in which you've you had to use a computer a lot or you took a computer skills class, that's going to be relevant. If you have to use written communication often, your English classes are going to be helpful. If you need to perform basic math functions, then your math courses are going to be helpful, right? So share what you know about yourself and have that planned. Also, your work experience. So many of you have probably worked before. I've been reviewing these executive summaries, and honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the amount of work experience so many of you have, right? So you've had other jobs in which you've done things like this, but so many people have also had other experience that require professionalism and require things that are very similar to work. So a lot of people on their executive summaries, they're going to put down babysitting or childcare. And you weren't hired by some big corporation to do that, but maybe you got paid, maybe you didn't. Things like lawn care, house sitting, watering the neighbor's plants. These are these things that require these job-like functions. And those are things that you can talk about. Those are experiences that you've had that you can use to convince somebody to hire you, right? Also, skills. So if you would, just put in the chat, what are some unique skills you have that you'd be able to bring to a workplace, right? What are those impressive things about you, right? So I know we talked last week, for those of you that are applying, so many companies as they go virtual are trying to make videos and produce videos, right? So that's an example of something that you can bring to a workplace. We've got somebody said problem solving. Problem solving is a great one. If you're used to solving problems and developing solutions, that's something that you can totally talk about, and that's something that's going to be useful in the workplace, okay? Some skills you got to consider are relatively common, right? So if you say and I'm not picking on anybody here, but if you say as your top skill that you know how to use Microsoft Word, like you typed out your resume and stuff, obviously you know how to use Microsoft Word. So think about what sets you apart from maybe your competition, from other people that are interviewing. Okay. Also talk about your strengths. Strengths are a lot like skills. They're the things that you're good at. They're what you can bring to a table. Okay. Next is weaknesses. Now, something that always bothers me when people are interviewing, they're like, man, somebody's going to ask me what's my greatest weakness. And then I'm supposed to say, man, I work too hard, right? I care too much. I love my mom too much, right? And that's nonsense. Nobody wants to hear that, okay? When people ask about your weaknesses, tell them about how you've overcome weaknesses. Don't just talk about, some made up nonsense that's not actually a weakness, okay? And then goals. Talk about what your goals are, and think about how that might be complementary to the company's goals, right? So that company is trying to make some money, right? If they're trying to make money and you're trying to learn things, right, those are going to be complementary to each other, okay? And Zoe's bringing up a great point about skills. Many people have not been participating in the chat, so please do that, right? And then lastly, you can write these things down for reference during your interview. And so when you interview, you'll probably want to bring things to write down in the first place, especially if they're in person. Bring a little pad folio, bring a little legal pad, and write down those things that you're best at. Also keep a copy of your resume. So if you get nervous during your interview, like everyone does, then you can reference that and talk about those experiences that you've had. All right, that's about it for Know Yourself. If you've got questions, we're happy to answer them in the chat. But I'm going to kick it over to Drew to talk about knowing the company.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. So, yeah, I'll talk to you guys a little bit about how you can find out, do some research on a company that you're interviewing with, and how that will benefit you in that interview. So some ways to go about it. You can look at the company website. I know for me, a bit of an anecdote here. For this job, looked at the SummerWorks website and the policy brief. And I found something in there that it piqued my interest, and I asked about it. in the interview, and I don't want to speak for Jordan, but it seemed like Jordan was impressed by that, and now I'm here. So I guess that partially worked. So yeah, that's a benefit, and that's a way you can go about it. If you can also go on their social media pages if the organization that you are going to interview with is active on social media. Like, that'd be a great way to go about it. You can look at the LinkedIns of the people that, like, if you know who is going to interview you, you can look at their LinkedIn, and maybe there's a connection point there or something like that you could bring up in the interview that could help you out. Let's see. And then you could also, if you know any previous employees who have worked for the company that you're interviewing with, you can ask them, gain some insight. I actually did that for a job in the past that I didn't get, but it was still helpful just to get an idea of like what to ask about, and just things about the company to know in general. And then, yeah, if it's a like significant like organization that's like active like in the news and whatnot, you can do your research there as well. And you can also just do an old-fashioned Google search. Either way, you can, there are several ways that you can go about like getting information on these organizations. And it would definitely benefit you to do so, because that just makes you more prepared and just better. You're more likely to impress that way if you show that you know what you're coming in for, and that you're invested in the company's success going forward. And also, big important thing, asking questions at the end is super important, and doing your research on the company will allow you to come up with some really great questions. So after all of that from me, I'm going to ask you guys, how can learning more about the company help you while interviewing? And so for this question, I would appreciate a couple of verbal responses, but you can also be active in the chat as well. So again, how can learning more about the company help you while interviewing?
It can help you get to know the company, so that when you go in there and you're talking, you can have some points to relate to the company, so that they know that you kind of like look them up, and they know that you're interested in the company, and you're not just like applying to a random company and you don't know anything about them. You kind of know what they're about.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Amara. Yeah, just shows that like you want to be there. If you go in and show that you know absolutely nothing about the organization that you're interviewing with, that you want to pay you money, like that's not a great look, so yeah, thank you for that. Any others? And I see a couple people have responded in the chat. Yeah, this is a good one. I don't think I said it can help you see what kind of skills that they're looking for. So yeah, that's really insightful. Yeah, thank you for that. That's another good point. Anybody else? Okay, yeah, those were two really great points. So now, Lexi, can you move the slide along? Thank you guys for your input. All right, so for clothing and grooming, these are just basic guidelines for you all. So for men, you want to go with either like a suit or khaki pants with a button-up shirt of some sort. That's just a good general guideline. Polos like I wear, those work for this too. But yeah, you generally want to go with khakis and some type of collared type shirt. And then let's see, yeah, no jeans or anything like that. That's just way too casual. They're not going to think you're taking it serious. Let's see, and let's move on. If a tie is worn, yeah, so don't have a busy tie, busy or wacky or anything like that. That again is just showing that you're not like quite serious about what's going on. If you have like a tie with something random like elephants or plants or something, they're not gonna, yeah, it's just you're not going to make a great impression. Dave's tie, I think it's just black. It's just a solid black tie. That's a good way to go if you're going to do that. And then make sure your shirt is tucked in. If it's having it out, it's just too casual. And then no gym shorts. I already mentioned no jeans. I can't imagine going into a job interview what the reaction would be if I were to wear the gym shorts that I'm wearing now. That would be, I don't know. I would love to see it. And then for women, just a clean blouse or a collared shirt is a good way to go. And then for like skirt length, you want it to be to about the knee. And then like pants, khakis or more formal material is appropriate for that. No jeans or open-toed shoes. No one wants to smell your feet while you're interviewing. Also not a great look. And then, short heels or flats. You don't need like stilettos. So just something simple like a short heel or flats. It's a good way to go. Overall, just in general, the number one rule is just to look like you want to be there. And to do that, you'll just, basically make it look like you made an effort to make a good impression. Let's see. And then I was going to ask you guys again, you can also either verbally or in the chat. For those of you who have interviewed in the past, what do you typically wear? Is it like kind of aligned with the guidelines we've provided, or have you like gone somewhere different? Let us know.
Do you want us to do this in the chat or like verbally?
Either way.
My last interview that I had, which was last week, I wore a button-up shirt and some slacks and some flats, some black flats.
Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's honestly perfect. And then we have in the chat turtleneck with slacks. Again, that works too. In the past I've worn I think for this job interview I wore like a gray long sleeve sweater type thing, but it looked like formal. It was from the Gap, so that's formal, right? Yeah, I don't know. And then just some slacks. So good way to go. Yep, I see. Yeah, it looks like you all have a pretty good. Oh, Shamara, tuxedo and all black Jordan 4s. I do like the kicks, but I don't know. I don't know if it's quite right for the interview, and the tuxedo might be the wrong type of formal. But if you guys are fans of The Office, Jim wore a tuxedo once when Idris Elba came in to be the boss, and it did not work well for him. But, all right. So Lexi, can you move on? Thank you. So now we'll go over the like graphic here a bit. So what do we got here? So on the left, that guy isn't necessarily like dressed to the nines. So some of the main things, the facial hair is a little bit scruffy. I can't really like call him out on that because mine is as well. I would have to trim it up a bit if I wanted to be properly prepared for an interview. And then as we go along in the chat, if you guys could point out what's wrong on the left here, that would be great. I'll follow along with you guys while I do this. The tie is a little busy. The shoes, he has open-toed shoes on. They don't look too clean. Not a great look. The pants are wrinkled, so he does have on the right type of pants, but they're wrinkly and they just look unkempt. So that's a big thing. You can wear the right pants, but if you don't iron them and make the proper preparations, it won't do you any good. Then in the chat, his paper. I didn't point this out last time, but like any documents that you guys have, you're gonna want to like have some type of folder, a portfolio of some sort. to hold those documents in, make sure they're crisp and whatnot. Yeah, just having a loose paper that you like that looks like he grabbed out of his pocket, not a great look. This is a good question. Do the watch and fingernails matter? I would say yes. You don't have to have a watch. That's not necessarily a requisite. But if you are going to wear a watch, I would, wear a decent watch if you have it. And then fingernails, yeah, that's just part of general cleanliness. If you can see that someone has like dirt in their fingernails and stuff, that might be a little off-putting. So yeah. All right. The watch. Oh, nice. Okay. Let's see. So on the right, so now if we can transition to what the guy on the right is doing correctly. It's basically the opposite of what the gentleman on the left was doing. It's a nice suit. It's not a tuxedo, so it's not like too flashy, but it's a nice conservative suit with a tie that's not too busy. General hygiene looks right, and he has a portfolio, which, yeah, that's good. Okay, I think we're good on that. Zoe or Lexi, can you move on to the next one? Sorry about that. Okay, so for this one, the woman on the left, and again, okay. So yeah, we'll go through this one pretty quickly. On the left, she has on just like the skirt's a bit too short. The dress in general is just a bit casual. On the right, it's much more professional. She's way more put together. Skirt's at a good length. The pumps, they're good too. She looks like she's ready for this interview. So, Lexi, go ahead. Yeah, it did look like she was going for a picnic. So the best way to get better at interviews is just practicing. At first, I was not great at interviews either. I'd get really nervous and I would talk like way too much, kind of like I'm doing now. So yeah, just practice a lot. You can practice either, this was pointed out last time, like in the mirror with yourself or with people in your house. All they have to do is just ask you questions, right? And these are like the questions that like we would ask. So yeah, just have something for tell me about yourself and why should we hire you? Yeah, just have something for all of those questions. And something that's helped me, like write those down, write your answers to those down, and don't like rehearse them, but just know them. You know what I mean? And then final thing, you will be able to schedule a mock interview with us. You'll get more information on that as we go along this slide. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass it along to Zoe.
All right, perfect. So let's dive a little deeper into writing questions for your employer. So just to reiterate what both Drew and Dave have said, that it's really important to impress the employer with your research, because employers really want to know why you want to work for them specifically. So I'm not saying that, you should be super cheesy with the flattery and, oh, you're the best company ever. But, they really want to know, oh, is it the mission that you really care about? Do you really care about education, things like that. So for me, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved with Summer Youth Employment Program, because I really care about educational equity and making sure that people in general have the resources that they need to be successful. So just again, what Drew was saying, especially if you know who's going to be interviewing you, make sure that you Google them, find their LinkedIn, all of that stuff, Google the organization, learn things that are not immediately available on their website. And so that way you can ask about them. So these are some examples of good questions because they're, not readily available. So what does it take to be successful at this company? What do you like about working for this company? That's also kind of a personal touch where, you're asking about the interviewer's experience. So then could you tell me more about the day-to-day responsibilities of this job? So those are some good questions. And then again, so Drew went through our website before his interview, and he asked about changes that would happen with the program from year to year. He also asked about things that were in the policy brief, which again, it showed that he dove really deep into the website. So that was a really good thing. And then, so I wanted to get all of your input just because I know we've been talking a lot, but what are some other good questions for an employer? You can either put it in the chat or just come off mute. Let's get at least one question. Dora, that's great. Love it. Yeah, you can ask them about their dress code because some places, you know, like if you're interviewing at, you know, a financial firm, they're probably going to have a very formal dress code. Whereas in our office, I know we're more of a business casual office. So as long as you have, you know, nice shirt, it's actually okay if you wear dark jeans. So yeah, asking about that is really great because it also sets you up for success in terms of what you're supposed to dress like at work. Yeah, and asking about the hours is great as well, Dana. Perfect. Okay, so just to emphasize, asking good questions is a really great way to stand out from other applicants. So it's important to have great answers to all the interviewers' questions, but you can really just put yourself above and beyond if you ask good questions. All right, let's go to the next slide, Lexi. Okay, so resume and references. I know you all have worked on really hard on your executive summaries. Some of you already have resumes, but I just want to emphasize when you interview, whether virtually or in person, it's important to have a copy, not just for your interviewer, but also for yourself, because it can be helpful to just kind of jog your memory and remind yourself of all the different skills and experiences that you bring to the table, as well as whatever you might want to talk about. And then we're also later in the summer going to talk about how to ask for references, but it's important to keep a running list in your mind of the people who can speak well on your behalf about your skills. So if I were to think of someone, I would think, well, I'm hoping that Jordan would be able to speak well about my professional skills because she's my boss. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later this summer. But yeah, we will also continue working on our resumes and getting those super polished. So we're here to provide support for those if anyone wants it. All right, let's go to the next one, Lexi. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the STAR technique. Can someone tell me what STAR stands for, either in the chat or come off mute? That's also a good point, Jordan. Thank you for saying that. All right, I'm going to ask Dave to pinch hit. Dave, can you tell us what STAR stands for, please?
I would love to. That stands for situation, task, action, result.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. Okay, so I'm going to explain each letter of this acronym, and then I'll give you all an example of things you could say for each with it. With a sample question. So the great thing about the STAR technique is that it's a really good way to talk about your accomplishments and skills with a potential employer without coming off as boastful. Because I know sometimes, you know, we all want to be humble. We don't want to brag or anything, but this is a good way to say exactly what you did and show how it's important. It's also a great opportunity to practice your storytelling. So for those of you who likes telling stories, this is a great technique for you. All right, go ahead, Lexi. All right, so like Dave said, so situation, task, action, and result. So with situation, you describe the event or a situation that you were in a job, like when you were, or maybe when you were faced with a challenge. So explaining what you had to do. And situation and task can kind of overlap sometimes, but basically with task, you need to make sure that you explain what you needed to do or accomplishment, and then what your role was in getting it done. And then action is describe the specific actions that you took to complete a task or meet a challenge. So it's the most important part about action is focusing on what you did in any challenges that you overcame. And this is really the time to add details about what you did. And then finally, for result, you explain what happened as a result of your actions. So you emphasize what you accomplished or what you learned. So also making sure that you emphasize why was it important. So we are going to send you all a STAR worksheet after this, and it'll help you get all practiced for your mock interviews or your actual interviews, depending if you're interviewing. So I'm going to give an example for a common interview question, which is, tell me about a problem or conflict that you recently handled. So for the situation or task, here's an example answer. I was working with a team of 4 on a project at school in my history class. We were supposed to write a report about migratory birds, and one of my teammates was not doing their work, and I was worried about getting a bad grade. So you're explaining what the situation is, and you're explaining the context of like why you were worried and what was happening. So then for action, you could say, first, I tried talking to my classmate about how I was feeling frustrated about him not doing his work, but he continued goofing off. Even though I didn't want to do the extra work myself, it was important to me to make sure the project was finished. So I worked with my other 2 teammates to distribute the tasks fairly. So that shows not only that you took initiative, but it shows that you helped make sure that the work was going to get done and you made a plan. Then for results, in the end, my other teammate didn't do his share of work, but our report still got done. I learned that it was important to do my best to collaborate, but ultimately make sure that the job got done. Again, you're showing your good judgment, making sure that the work got done, even though you had to do extra work. So I think that is kind of an example to reflect on. And then we're happy to also work with you to talk about your experiences when you are preparing to mock interview. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jordan.
Thanks, Zoe. So like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about confidence, which is something that I still work on all the time, because I don't know about you all, but I still get pretty nervous for interviews, even though I've gone through quite a few in my young life. And I think it's especially different for virtual interviews, which are becoming more and more popular. So a lot of times employers will use phone interviews as kind of like the first step or screening process, really, to see if they want to hear more from you. So a lot of people are doing that, but they're switching to virtual interviews. So they'll have you get on something like Zoom and answer some questions, and they'll use that to decide whether or not they want to bring you in for an in-person interview and take that next step to know more about you. So it's especially important to, make sure you're putting your best foot forward. So portraying and feeling confident will really help you do that. And since quite a few of you have interviewed before, I wanted to ask you all, what are some things that you do before an interview or during an interview to feel more confident?
Anybody ever heard of the power stance, the bear, or the Superman pose? Let me see some thumbs up if you've heard of that. No? At least the people last year should know about it for sure. So anytime you have an interview, maybe 5 minutes before your interview gets started, you usually hit the restroom, make sure you're looking good, your hair is straight, your shirt and tie are straight or whatever. Take a few minutes where you stand in the Superman pose, where both hands are on your hips, your feet are firmly planted, and you just tell yourself some positive affirmations like, there's a reason they brought me in for this interview. I'm smart enough to make it through this interview. Looking good, big fella. Hey, I think I'm looking good, so now it's time for me to go and take this job. And it's a confidence builder. And someone had some statistics. Was it Lexi or Zoe? One of you had some actual statistics that this move really does work.
Yeah, I don't have any actual numbers like off the top of my head, but I'm a psychology major and I just finished up my degree. And one of the things that we had to research in some of my psychology classes was the effect of like the power pose that we're talking about on like someone's interviewing. And a researcher did a study and compared people who did the power pose before their interviews with people who did not do the power pose before their interviews. And the people who did do the power pose often did much better in their interviews, portrayed themselves as more confident, and I would think got the jobs more often. So there's that. Keep that into consideration when you go into your interviews.
Yeah, thank you both. Zoe does a power pose and eats a mint. That's good. Like Dave said, you may be able to, skip the mint for other people's sake if it's a virtual interview, but that is a great practice. Does anyone else want to share? I don't know about you, no offense, Dave. I'm a little tired of hearing your voice, so I don't want to ask you to share again. I'm also totally kidding. I love Dave. I know y'all have interviewed, and we have some confident people in the bunch. I know that you all have things you do to feel more confident.
I talk to myself and just keep telling myself I got this. And I usually, like, if I tell some of my friends I have an interview a certain day, they're like hype my head up, so I'll be real excited for it. But I also prepare myself well enough. Like, my last interview was at Tim Hortons, so I went and I looked up online like the questions that they asked. So I already knew the questions that they were going to ask before I even got to the interview, because it's just a basic list of questions usually that most companies use. So I just make sure I'm very prepared, and that boosts my confidence.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And you can, practicing common interview questions is a really great thing to do. You can also sometimes look up people's posts on like Glassdoor and things like that. And there's sometimes information about what the interview process is like. Dave says that he often wears cowboy boots to make himself feel quote unquote cool and tall in interviews. I have never heard that before, but it is literally whatever works for you. All right, so just a couple of quick tips that are on the slide. So we talked about this, but dress the part. I always feel better when I'm dressed professionally, so make sure you're doing that and using, some of the tips we've covered. Body language is key, especially when you're in a virtual interview and those usual like in-person interactions we have with people are lost. So you want to sit up straight, try not to fidget around too much, and then probably the weirdest part of this, but one of the most important, is to try to make eye contact. And doing that during a virtual interview is weird. So like right now, I'm looking at the images of all of you on my screen. And so if you're looking at my face, it doesn't look like I'm making direct eye contact with you, right? Thanks, Lexi. So, but if you look directly into your webcam, that's what you want to do to give the illusion of making eye contact with people. I know that feels really weird, but get in the habit of doing it. So last time Shamar asked me to repeat that, so I'll do it again. Make sure you look into your webcam and not at the images of the people on your computer screen. And then Shamar said this, so while you're doing your power pose or whatever, or if you wanna do like Amara does and tell your friends and have them be your hype people, think positive thoughts. There's absolutely a reason you got selected for that interview. And the other thing is, you all are super impressive just for being here. You're sitting here taking hours out of your summer to do a virtual professional development program. You're not even doing what you anticipated you'd be doing as a part of SummerWorks. So just by being here, you're already taking a huge step in preparing yourselves. And then don't forget to speak slowly and pause to take time to think about an answer. So if you don't understand a question, ask the interviewer to clarify, please. It's 100 times better to ask for clarification about what they mean than just winging it and giving an answer that makes 0 sense because you didn't answer the question. And if they ask you something that you need a minute to really think about, it's okay to say, that's a great question. You know, I need a minute to think about that a little more. So I know that you know, that might feel strange, but don't be afraid to do that. Again, it's so much better to think about and provide a thoughtful answer than just spitting out the first thing that comes to mind. And then, like others have said, the best thing you can do is prepare. So practice, definitely have a copy of your resume or executive summary, whatever, right in front of you. It's a great physical reminder of exactly all the skills and experience you bring to the table. I do that, and it helps me remember those things and talk about them when I'm interviewing. And then if you want some more on that, there is a link in the slides to a YouTube video. I think it's a TED Talk about body language. But we can go to the next slide, Lexi. So like I said, you know, because virtual interviews are just so much different from in-person ones, they can be pretty nerve-wracking. So we want to go through, there are 9 different tips we want to highlight specifically for when you're thinking about doing a virtual interview. You can go to the next one. So the first one, super important, test your technology. Make sure you have good internet connectivity. Make sure your camera and your microphone are working. That would probably be the worst thing if you tried to log in and the person interviewing you could not hear anything you're saying. Make sure your name on Zoom and your profile picture. So like when I stop my video, you see how there's that nice professional headshot of me? Yeah, you don't want anything goofy like what some folks have on like their Google, like their Gmail account. So make sure you change that and it's nice and professional. Also, you can notice the tweet on the right there. Please don't, this is probably not the best time to mess around with funny Zoom backgrounds or the Snap camera add-on. This person turned themselves into a potato and couldn't figure out how to take it off for the entire meeting. You don't want to be a potato while you're interviewing for a job. And also, just remember that your background like stays the same when you log into Zoom meetings. So like last week when I had on that dog meme background where like everything is on fire and he's saying that's fine, I logged into a Zoom interview with my boss and like our whole staff, and it was still there from soft skills last week. So make sure you change that. And then the biggest thing is don't procrastinate to check these things. So don't wait until 5 minutes before your interview to check your technology and make sure you're good to go. You should check as soon as you know you have one, and again, the day of. And I have a reminder here, if you all need help or you need you know, access to Wi-Fi or a computer, please let us know. The SummerWorks team can help you with that. It's not ideal to do Zoom interviews from your phone. I know from experience, the functionality of Zoom is not the same on your phone. So don't forget, we can help you with it. All right, next slide. All right, so then you want to set the scene and try to minimize the distractions around you. So it's really important that you figure out ahead of time where you're actually going to do the interview. So you want to try to find a room with decent lighting and as few distractions or noise as possible. So try to find a quiet room or a space. Make sure you turn off the TV, silence your cell phone, close any windows nearby. It's not a good look if the employer can hear your sibling sucking it up playing 2K in the background. And then try to make sure you organize your surroundings. So it doesn't matter if you're taking the interview from the couch in your living room or if you have a desk in your house. Just try to organize, the space that's directly around you and visible on the webcam. All right, and then I also wanted to include some tips. We could all use a little help looking and feeling our best on the webcam. You don't want to look like Joe Exotic and like you just cut your own hair 3 weeks into quarantine when you log in for your interview. So try to light your face. So you'll notice right now, I don't have a ton of natural light where I'm sitting, so it's all artificial, and I'm real pasty because I have been inside since last summer. So I look really washed out. So try to let natural light in. Try to have your biggest light source in front of you. And then remember that your screen gives off light too. So like on Tuesday when we were doing this at night, I really had no natural light in here. My face looked super blue because of the light coming off of my screen. And then try to raise your camera. So you want your camera to be sitting at eye level. That's the best sort of angle. I promise almost any table you have in your house is below eye level. So you can get some books and like prop up your computer. That's cool. You don't want to be like looking like this during your interview. And then get comfortable. So try to find a spot where you can sit really comfortably for the duration of your interview. Once it starts, you don't want to be like fidgeting or messing around with your camera. All right, next slide. So we've talked about this. Make sure you sit down prepared. So just because you're at your computer doesn't mean you should be like Googling responses to common interview questions while you're talking to the person. So make sure you've done your research, like others have said, about the company, review the job description, and it's also really good to search the person that you're interviewing with. I actually remember for Zoe's interview, she had done her research and looked up at least LinkedIn accounts for myself and the other people that interviewed her. And when we got to the point where we asked her if she had any questions, she was like, hey, Sarah, you know, I saw that I don't remember what specifically it was something about her educational background, I think. And she was like, you know, that's really interesting. Can you tell me more about this? Super impressive, and showed that Zoe was extremely interested in the job. Yeah, she did go to Harvard. All right, yep, and I said make sure you have a copy of your resume, and it's good to write down any notes, things you want to make sure you bring up during the interview, or questions that you want to ask. Don't be like this guy and say, I was born at a very young age when you're told to tell someone about yourself. That is a terrible response. All right, next slide. Also, if people have questions or reactions, like feel free to unmute yourself and jump in or drop it in the chat. I'm totally cool with that. So along the lines of practicing, practice all you want. Don't memorize a script. You don't want to sound super like robotic or overly rehearsed. It's really important to sound genuine. So it may not come across that way if you're reading answers that you've like pre-written down word for word. So yeah, it's good, you know, practice with your friends or family. It might feel weird to do that, but it's super helpful, and it allows you to make mistakes and get feedback in a space that's a lot safer and low stakes than when you're in front of the employer. All right, Lexi. Okay, so then I'm not going to read through all of these. It's just for your reference. These are some common interview questions. We'll also be asking you some of these in your mock interviews. So like Amara said, like this is something she does. She looks up common questions and practices. So this is for your reference to do that. And yes, completely normal to be nervous before you're interviewing, even when you practice. I always feel nervous when I walk in. All right, next slide. And so, you know, we talked about this briefly as well, but like I said, the normal kind of interactions you have with someone when you're in person, you can shake their hand, whatever. They're totally lost in a virtual setting. So what you want to do is make sure you're monitoring your body language. So sit up straight, give a smile. Again, keep your camera at eye level, and then don't forget to make eye contact. And then to also fill in some statistics in case you don't believe anything I'm saying. Research does show that employers are more likely to remember you and what you said if you made eye contact with them while you're talking. All right, next one. Dress for success. Again, I know we're reiterating some things, but they're super important. Yes, it includes pants. I know people are, you know, not to throw him under the bus, but my husband has done this. He does like business on top, real comfortable, sweatpants on the bottom when he's at home doing these Zoom meetings. Please don't roll up to your interview like Ezekiel Elliott with a suit jacket on and no pants. Please wear pants. Dress the part like you would for an in-person interview. It will help you feel so much better. All right, and then there's just more examples of professional attire, but we can go to the next one. This is probably one of the hardest tips that I have to share. So try to make a connection. It is not easy, especially over Zoom or, you know, another like video conferencing thing. But you might be the last person on a long list of people who a hiring manager is interviewing, and you want to make yourself stand out. So don't be afraid to be personable, you know, but appropriate. It's okay to share, you know, a personal story when you're answering a question or, you know, talk about a common interest. So an example I shared on Tuesday was when I first met my advisor for my master's program, I, you know, walked into her office and I noticed that she had a Chicago Cubs banner hanging up. I'm really into baseball, and the Cubs had just won the World Series. So it was super easy to just strike up a conversation about that and ask her about it. And we very quickly, you know, connected over that shared interest that we had. So don't be afraid to ask those questions or have short side conversations. It will really help you stand out on another level. All right, next slide. Okay, so be yourself. You're great. You know, like we've said, there's a reason that you got selected out of all the people that applied. Your resume and your experience stood out enough for them to bring you in and spend time interviewing you. And they're really trying to figure out if you're a good fit, you know, for their company for that position. And you applied for the job for a reason, so you're obviously very interested in the position and excited for the opportunity, or at least to make money. That is also a thing. And while it can be really difficult to express enthusiasm through a screen, try your best to be expressive when you answer questions. And then another great way to show enthusiasm and interest in that job is, again, asking great questions. I promise you, if you ask wonderful, thoughtful questions, the employer is going to remember you. That is the thing that I remember most about every single one of the people I interviewed for the success coach position. And I'm telling you, Dave, Drew, and Lexi were the three that asked the best questions. And it's a huge reason why they're sitting here right now. So when you get to that, any interview with me and don't ask questions, forget. Okay, Shamari. If he's saying if you don't ask questions, don't plan on getting the job. And there is nothing more off-putting than when you get to that section and I say, yeah, do you have any questions for me? And someone says, no, not really. You already answered them all. It comes off as you don't care, just to be frank. So that is so, so important. All right, next slide, which is my last slide. Immediately follow up. Just like I promise you they'll remember the questions you asked, they will remember if you thanked them for interviewing you or not. So please thank your interviewers. Send individual emails to everyone who interviewed you within 24 hours. That's the best thing to do. It shows that you value their time, but it also gives you the opportunity to kind of resell yourself as the best candidate for the job. So again, if you connected with them over something in the interview, that thank you email is a great place to drop that in again. It's an opportunity for you to say, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. You know, I'm really excited for this opportunity to join your company and do whatever the job is that you'll be doing. I get really salty when people do not send thank you emails after I interview them. So, and it's not just me. And then one thing I did want to add was on Tuesday, someone asked for like sample emails that you could send. So I did find an article that I thought had some pretty good kind of samples you could follow. So I'm dropping the link to that in the chat if you all want to look at it. Obviously, don't copy it. And the only other thing is you don't want to write a novel. So make sure you're thoughtful in your thank you email, but keep it short and concise. All right, and now we get to see yours truly, Shamar Heron and Dave Coble, doing some practice interviews.
All right, so we thought it would probably helpful if we have an example of bad interviews and an example of a better interview. And Shamar readily volunteered to do the example of a bad interview. So what I'd like you to do during this time is include in the chat some things that are going wrong or going right, because Shamar does do some things well in this interview. You just really have to search for them. And then we'll kind of debrief a little bit at the end, talk about what he could have done differently and how he could have better prepared. Okay, so wonderful. Lexi, can you come off mute and play the video?
All right, Mr. Heron, thank you for meeting today for this interview. I saw your resume, very professional. And so I suppose...
Yeah, my cousin wrote that for me.
Oh, well, you know, it's always nice to have help. And if you could you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I could.
And
what if I don't feel like it?
Could you maybe also remove your, I believe those are sunglasses? Although stylish, it appears that the sun is coming in like towards your back, in which the sunglasses, they're a move that doesn't really make sense given this scenario.
I see you guys are pretty strict over there, huh?
You know, we try to be.
All right, let's do this. Tell me, what was your question, sir?
Could you tell me about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Shamar. You know, I like to do stuff. You know, usually I do it just so that I get it done. I really don't always put the best effort in, but at the end, I clean it up and make it look really good. So that's one of my good skills is, you know, I guess some might say slacking. I say being innovative and creative. Another thing about me is, you know, every chance I get, I like to spend money. You got to be able to have fun in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life is about having fun. This work stuff, man, the only reason I'm doing this is because my mom told me if I don't figure it out, she gonna kick me out the house or at least make me get off the couch.
Okay. So being innovative, being creative, those are all things that we can work with.
Hey, hold on 1 second. Hey, Mom! Don't put no cheese on my cheeseburger, okay? No cheese. All right. Yeah.
Mr. Heron, you should be aware that when having a cheeseburger, the cheese is part of that. Could you tell me why you're interested?
Hey, Mom! Don't put no ham on my hamburger either.
Mr. Heron, could you just kind of let me know why you're interested in this position?
Mr. Coble, I just told you I'm going to get put out if I don't figure out how to make some money and not play 2K 16 to 18 hours a day. Okay. So I got to figure this out. And your company, you had a cool logo. I like you guys' logo. So I called my cousin. I said, hey, make some stuff. I mean, can you help me write a resume that makes a lot of sense so that I can go work and not get put out and
absolutely
still play 2K. But I read the job description and some of the stuff. I think I could do moderately well.
Okay. Well, could you tell me about a time that you had to make a tough decision at work or in life?
Great question. So I'll tell you about the time, you know, my coworkers, they were like, just leave. They won't even know that you left. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. But then there was a little voice inside of me that said, don't go anywhere because your manager will be looking for you. So I made the tough decision to not leave work early so that we could go play some more 2K. So I could have like just went and left work, right? You feel what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like I could have left, but I used, you know, thinking because I need money so I don't get kicked out of the house so I can play 2K.
Yeah, and we do strive to have all of our employees, as you said, use thinking. That's pretty important around here.
See, the mentals, you got to use them.
Got to use them. Yeah. Well, I think we're almost done here.
You smell that?
But do you have any? Nope. This is virtual. I can't smell anything about
that. Might be me then, right?
Probably.
Oh.
It's likely that it's you, given the situation.
So the quarantine out here. I'm just in the house.
Yep.
Here.
Absolutely.
Can't nobody else smell it. I'm gonna just keep it going.
Well, do you have any questions for me before we finish things up here?
Do I get paid for this interview?
No. No, you do not. All right.
Can y'all help me with my cell phone bill, like right now? Because my minutes is getting low.
So the way we do this is when you work for us, which I wouldn't count on right now, we give you money, which you can then use to exchange for goods and services.
Interesting concept. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Well, it's just one way to do things. All right, Mr. Heron. Well, thank you very much.
Well, hold on. I got more questions.
All right.
Where'd you get that tie, man? That's a nice tie, brother.
I got this at Goodwill. Okay. Specifically the Goodwill in Saginaw, Michigan.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You think they hiring?
Yes.
Okay.
A bit of a commute.
If I could do modestly a good job, you think they'll hire me?
Based on this interview, no. But
so what you're saying is I didn't interview well?
That is correct.
Is it the T-shirt? I should have wore my He Got Game T-shirt.
That would have actually that would have been an improvement over the current T-shirt.
Okay, puke green isn't my color. Duly noted. Duly noted. All right. Last question.
All right.
How much y'all think y'all gonna pay me for this job I'm about to get with y'all?
I don't think that we're going to pay you because at this point in time, we don't intend on hiring you.
Well, that's discrimination, isn't it?
No, you had a very bad interview. And I believe you mentioned your cousin wrote your resume, so.
Some chicken, yeah. But yeah, he did write it. And you said it was a good resume.
Yeah.
At the beginning, right? So, all right, man. I mean, when do I start?
You don't.
Oh, all right. Well, can you refer me to somebody?
Yeah, absolutely.
I come work for you.
Hard pass. But
all right.
We talked about the Goodwill in Saginaw, Michigan. Maybe that's an option.
All right. Well, I don't got a car, so maybe they'll let me work virtually.
Maybe.
Welcome to Goodwill. How may I help you?
They'll just have a computer monitor out front.
Boom,
just greedy.
done.
Too easy.
Like all right, man. So I'll see you on the first day of work, man. Have a good day.
All right.
Okay, solid. So there was a lot of interesting things that happened in the past 8 minutes. Honestly, I think I would hire Shamar in this situation, like a couple hours, maybe one shift a week, just to keep things interesting. I think that'd be worth the investment. But let's talk real quick. What are some things that he could have done better to prepare or?
I got the job, y'all. I got the job. A couple hours a week. Yeah, baby. I thought I wasn't here, huh?
I don't know if a couple hours a week would keep you from getting put out, though.
She didn't say I needed to pay rent. She said I needed to get a job, Jordan. I want to hear from the youngsters. I'm interested to see.
His questions were unrelated to work. It was more, or business. It was more just like random questions or questions that just didn't really make any sense. And a lot of what he had to say ended with, so I could play 2K, or I want to play 2K. So kind of like shows that you're more interested in playing the game than you are in getting the job.
Okay, good,
Thanks, Mr.
solid answer.
Amara. Who's next? I want to hear from some people who haven't spoken. Please don't make me call you out, because you do know your names are up here. So if you've spoken more than twice, I'm going to ask you to step back. If you haven't spoken today, I'm going to ask you to step up. This is part of engagement. This is part of employment. This is part of enrichment. You can't just sit back, watch this, and say you did it, and then expect us to think you're really engaged with us. Give us some insight, folks. There was a lot of conversation on the chats.
He asked how much he wanted to get paid.
Say it again, Jordan.
I said he asked how much he was about to get paid.
What's wrong with that?
Because you don't know if you got the job yet.
Huh. Interesting concept again. Do you all agree with that? You don't ask for how much the position pays in an interview if you don't know you're getting the position? Do some of you know you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you? So you are allowed to ask questions. I don't recommend you ask about compensation very early on in the interview, but I do think you have the right to ask, because they may tell you $5 an hour. Well, that's not minimum wage. $9.50 an hour, $9.65 an hour, and you were looking to make $14 an hour. If you don't ask, how will you know? It's about timing. Somebody else. Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate you.
He wasn't dressed very appropriately for the interview. He's wearing sunglasses and a t-shirt. So
it was hot, Brandon. Geez, you guys are, come on, man. Who else? Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. Hunter, what do you think?
Okay. Just the whole setup wasn't appropriate, well, professional in my opinion, with the sun coming in from the back, and then the interruptions that just kept on happening throughout the whole interview.
Hey, Ma! Hunter doesn't like the interruptions. Duly noted. Thanks, Hunter. I'm going to take one more. Don't make me call your name. I'm looking at a few. I love everybody's name. Like Christabel. Yep. Didn't think I would notice, did you? Come on, give me some information. You're the last one. Bring us on home on one other thing that could, should, or should not be happening in an interview virtually.
He had rude responses.
I love how you all keep saying he like it wasn't me. It's okay to say, Shamar, you sucked at this.
You had rude responses, and the setting, the background, those sunglasses, just unprofessional.
I only asked for one. Thank you. Thanks, though. Here, real quick. So some of you know, as you move along and you start to get positions that are higher up in the organization, just know, like for my position, I went through 6 interviews, just so you know, just to get this job. I had a phone call, I did a virtual, then I met with my direct manager, I met with my direct manager and our manager of finance, I met with my manager and the chair of our board. Then I met with all of the staff. So as you move along through life, you won't just have one interview to get a position. A lot of times you're going to have multiple interviews, and you can't ask the same questions in every interview. So that's where a lot of the research is going to come in. You research the business, but you also research the people you're going to be interviewing. So when you get an interview, it's okay to say, can you tell me the names of the people I'll be interviewing with? And if they say, well, the director of finance, then you jump on there and you get your fingers going and you look up who's the director of finance for that organization. If they seem hesitant, you can always call somebody else within the organization and say, hey, I'm just looking for some information on Jordan Green or Zoe Erb or Lexi LaChop. Like, you can ask, and you'd be surprised how much information you can get by just making a couple of phone calls to the organization you're interviewing with. Got a lot of faith in you all. I'm going back to play 2K. It's been fun.
All right, solid. Lexi, can you move us forward a slide, please? And I'd just like to say right quick about the money question. You don't want to ask at the beginning of the interview, because then it seems like that's all you're thinking about. But you need to ask at the end, especially if you're making. So I know right now a lot of folks are making job moves, which is great, and you're probably going to make between $9 and $16 an hour. But I almost moved to Hobbs, New Mexico for a job being the director of STEM education at a middle school. But I asked, and they told me that they were only going to pay me $32,000 a year, which was not the right answer for me moving all the way to Hobbs, New Mexico. So make sure that you're thinking about those things, because it's important, right? It's an important career decision. All right, Lexi, can you play the good interview? And this is the same thing. Tell us what goes right, tell us what goes wrong throughout the interview.
Hey, SummerWorks participants. Today, Drew is going to be interviewing me for a fake position as a school health coordinator at Bullet Creek School District. And hopefully, this is going to be an example of a good interview.
Well, hey, welcome, Dave. Thanks. Thank you so much for coming in and interviewing for the health coordinator position here at this university. I really liked your application. So if you're ready, I think we can get started with the interview portion. All right. So Dave, my first question to you is going to be, tell me about a little bit about yourself, if you could.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity to interview here today. So I graduated high school in 2011 from Bullet Creek High School, wanting to help people. I then went to college to study education. While in college, my freshman year actually, I started a wrestling program at a Title I school at a local middle school. In 2013, I joined the Army Reserve. And then in 2016, I graduated. And then I coached and I taught at Dow High School in Midland for 3 years. I left teaching in 2019 to study public health and educational policy at the University of Michigan. Currently, I volunteer with the American School Health Association and host a podcast about school health. I believe the school should be the healthiest place in the community, and that all children are entitled to an exceptional education. And I've really devoted my life's work to making that happen.
Thank you for that, Dave. I really like that response. So my second question for you is going to be, why are you interested in this specific position?
So I'm really passionate, as I hope I've gotten across already, about school health. And I know rural districts really face unique strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats compared to urban schools. There are vast educational and health inequities that are present in Midland County. And I'd really cherish the opportunity to work with district staff, parents, and community stakeholders to help narrow those gaps.
Okay, thank you. So in this position, you'll have to, you'll be faced with some tough decisions at times. So knowing that, can you tell me about a time that you had to make a tough decision while you were at work?
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I was new at a roofing company in 2011. So towards the end of the Great Recession, when we found out that everyone was getting laid off at the end of that project. And so everybody except for me quit like right on the spot. And so I was the only employee left in the entire branch that was just like a laborer. And so my team was supposed to get the materials ready and drive them to the job site. So everything that you'd need to take off an old roof and then all the materials for the new roof. And so I loaded up the truck and I started on my way. And I called the branch manager on the way and just kind of updated them on what was happening. And then we got the job done. It was the branch manager, all the salespeople and myself, and we got the new roof on. And I was given a $5 an hour raise for that entire project. And then that raise continued, and I was brought on as a foreman with the branch manager's new company. And that company is still going today. In fact, it cleared 7 figures last year.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Okay, so that's all of the questions I had for you. Again, thank you so much for coming in. Really enjoyed talking to you just now. So yeah, last thing, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, actually, so I saw that your website doesn't list anything about school health currently. I was just wondering if there are currently any programs or initiatives underway.
So yes, and that's part of why we want to bring you. We want to bring somebody in for this position because those things are in progress, are in the works, but we want to make sure that they are as fleshed out and as quality as possible before we start implementing those initiatives and resources.
Wonderful.
Okay, wonderful. And thank you, Drew, for taking the time to make that video with me. So a couple things that we're going to talk through. Since we're running just a scoot short on time, I'm just going to talk through things brought up in the chat. The eye contact was a little bit better, but not perfect. Posture was good. Answers were more focused, but they were like over reliant on the notes, and you'll notice that I kept looking down at them, which you don't want to do. So trust that you prepared adequately, and even kind of put your notes away if that would be better. Zoe said that there was good observations, which I agree with. And then and then there was good questions at the end. And feel free to write down your questions because like those are going to take research to develop. And also, this came up on Tuesday. What if your question already is asked prior to the end of the interview? So I suggest writing down 5 questions, and that way if 3 of them get answered along the way, you still have 2 others that you can ask. Because it is really common that you'll show up with 1 to 2 questions and they get answered along the way, just as your interviewer is telling you about the company. Okay. So I think we're going to kick it over to Zoe. She's going to tell you about how to schedule your mock interview.
All right, thanks, Dave. Lexi, would you mind bringing up the instructions for mock interviewing? Perfect. All right, so we will be sharing this document with everyone, so don't worry about getting this all right now. But first, I wanted to talk to you all about the mock interview structure. So first, they're going to last for 30 minutes total. Your mock interviewer will ask you questions for 15 minutes, and we will show you those questions. And then the final 15 minutes will be to give you feedback. So they'll give you some live in the moment feedback that you can take and practice before your mock interview. Your mock interviewer, sorry, I just said that backwards. So you can just continue practicing after the mock interview before you might have a real interview. Your mock interviewer will also fill out an evaluation form and send it to you via email, so that way you have some concrete feedback that's written down and you don't necessarily have to remember everything that they said in the moment. So Lexi, can we scroll down to the questions real quick? Perfect. All right. Can I have one of y'all participants read the mock interview questions for me? Just read them to the whole group. Just numbers 1 through 6.
It
Okay,
doesn't show great participation. But go ahead, whoever it was. Ariel, maybe. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, it's Ariel. Please tell me a little bit about yourself. What interests you about this position? How have your experience to date helped prepare you for this job? Tell me about a problem or conflict you recently handled. How would you describe your ability to work as a team member? Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much for volunteering. So we want to make sure that you all are set up for success with your mock interviews. So those are the questions that your mock interviewer will ask you. Hopefully you'll have time to get to all of them in the 15 minutes, but it could be possible that you might just get to numbers 1, 2, and 6, depending on how much detail you go into. But yeah, so definitely practice those. Reach out to us if you have any questions or would like coaching. The success coaches in Dallas are all available for you all. And then before I continue, I just want to emphasize mock interviewing is for all of you who are not interviewing for job placements this year. So if you have any questions about that, please stay on the call and ask us. All right, Lexi, if we could scroll back up to how to actually schedule the interviews. Okay, so the main thing about scheduling is we are using Google Calendar appointment slots. So if you do not have a Gmail account, we would love it if you would create one. Good news is that it's free, and so you can just go to gmail.com and click create account. This is also a great opportunity to create a professional email address if you don't already have one. But it will make your life easier, not just in this program, but also moving forward. So you are going to receive all of these instructions again via email about how to schedule things, but we're also going to show you right now. So the first step is that you need to navigate to the calendar page. So Lexi, would you mind just doing that real quick? And just so you all know, the slots are going to be the weeks of June 1st and the weeks of June 8th. So when you first go to this calendar, notice how there's no appointment slots. What's happening? Make sure that you just scroll to the right weeks. So Lexi, if you could just go ahead. So it will look like this. So it looks like there's a lot of different buttons, right? But the good news is that that means that there's lots of different people who are able to interview you. So you will either interview with Dallas or one of the success coaches, or Jordan or myself. And Lexi is going to be the keeper of scheduling all of those. But basically you will go in and you will click on your preferred time. So I think that's 10:30, yep. So you'll just go in and click and it will show you, okay, like this is in my calendar. So please just make sure that when you do sign up that your name is readily available. So if your name with your Gmail account is your actual name, you don't need to worry about this. But I would definitely make sure that your name is associated with your Gmail account. The other thing to note is that there are job descriptions that are attached in this document, and there are different numbers. So if you could just kind of show them real quick, Lexi. So Washtenaw Community College, that is position number 2. University of Michigan, that's number 3. So just indicate the number of the job that you want to mock interview for in the job description. So those are the 2 main important things. Make sure your name and the job number are in the appointment, please. So then what will end up happening is Lexi will follow up with everybody on Monday, June 1st to confirm your mock interview. And then whoever your mock interviewer is will update the calendar appointment with a Google Meet button. So I think you all might be familiar with Google Meet, but it's another teleconferencing platform like Zoom. It's just embedded in Google Calendar, which is kind of nice. So I think those are all of the instructions for now, but please make sure that you sign up for a mock interview by this Sunday. May 31st at 5 p.m. So Lexi can do her job on Monday, make it easy on her. But I think that's it for now. Does anyone have any questions for us about this right now?
Yes, I do. So the mock interviews is going to be with the options with the jobs that you were just, the job 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the positions that we're interviewing about.
Exactly. So you'll pick one that maybe you would be interested in interviewing for in real life. And then you will, maybe Google the different organizations and the things like that, the one that you want to interview for, and then you'll answer the questions as if you are interviewing for the job that is listed here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Great question, Ariel.
I did want to clarify something real quick. I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it. I think it's good to reiterate though. So you're only signing up for a mock interview if you're not interviewing for a real internship. And then I did want to say one other thing about like asking about salary and pay. This gets me real heated. So I wanted to share this, but employers really should be transparent and exercise the practice of listing the pay range or salary on their job posting. And if they don't do that, it may give you, for me, when I see that, it makes me question whether or not that's a place I'm super interested in working at. Because to me, it's just a super important practice that you list that and you be transparent and upfront. And I think more employers are starting to move in that direction. But I did want to point that out. So just be wary of that because they really should be posting that kind of stuff up front.
Hey, Jordan, can we just engage in a little dialogue maybe over the next 2 or 3 minutes? We have Peg Windsor on the line, and her primary role is working with employers. She's the one who's out normally making sure that there are enough jobs on one half of this program to make sure that we are engaging our businesses correctly. But she also does that as her everyday job. And so, Peg, what is some of the insights that you've heard from businesses who do not post their pay grades or how much they're paying? Why are they saying they are not putting those up?
Well, after I've talked to them, usually I find out that they're either paying minimum wage or just a little bit over, so they're sort of hiding that information. They also don't want to put in a pay range. They just want to talk to the interviewee first to see what their experience is before they make any commitment to a pay, because it could be above what they are even advertising. So that's a couple of the reasons why they don't put it on there. But usually it's because it's not a real high pay. I warn them of that. It's better to put it on there than it is, they're going to assume that it's going to be low if you don't put it on there. More information is always better. I always like the interviews where, they start out with, let me tell you about the job and what I'm looking for. And in that time, they do talk about compensation. Not many employers do that, but it's really nice to have. It's transparent. But I do have a lot of employers that, for whatever reason, just don't put the pay range in there. It's a difficult question to ask for somebody that's interviewing. It should be done at the end if you decide to ask. And that is something to practice, because to just say, well, how much you're going to pay me is not appropriate. It needs to be done in a way where they don't feel like they are giving away secret information. But those are the main reasons.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I'm looking around to see if anybody has anything else, and it does not appear so. So that was our grand finale of Professional Development Session 2. Now, if you've got specific questions, please stay on the line for the next minute or two. and staff will stay on to try to do our best to answer those. But if not, please sign up for your mock interviews. We won't have professional development formally next week because we're assuming people will have mock interviews, but then we'll get started up again the week after that.
So we're able to go?
Yep.
Okay, everybody have a good day.
Hey, Dora.
Hi, sorry, I have just one quick question.
Don't apologize for having a question. We love questions.
So is the pay this year, like if you're interviewing for like an actual job placement, is it going to be similar to last year, or are we just doing like the stipend?
Nope, it is the exact same as last year. So you do have you've graduated high school by now, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll actually get more. You get $12 an hour.
Okay. Sounds good. That was my question. That's it.
It's a good one.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You
Bye,
too,
Dora.
Dora. See you later.
All right.
We made it.
Great job, team.
Good job.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, I'm out of here. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye, Shamar.
Bye, Shamar.
Bye.
Is there anything you need